So I guess, first of all, congratulations on the second season renewal.
Thank you.
Were you at all aware of how long it had been since CBS had renewed a single camera comedy?
We were not. We knew going in that it was a little bit of, it was new territory for them, single cameras in general. So it was something that someone pointed out, not for quite some time had they picked up a second season of a single cam. So we're very excited.
You don't know, it's like, I guess it's since MASH. Is that right? It's on? Testing? It's not on.
I heard there
Push
were.
the button.
There we go. Oh,
Here we are.
now it's on.
That was the
Since
one.
MASH, right?
That was the one that had lasted past 2. I believe Brooklyn Bridge in 1993 was the most recent.
And
so-
who doesn't remember
That's
that?
crazy.
Right?
Exactly. So, when you're vaguely aware of something like that, is it in the back of your mind at all that you're sort of trying something that is new and maybe out of the comfort zone of the network that you're on?
It is, and there's definitely parts of the process where you feel like just from the practical nature of the production schedule, things like that, the execution of the show is much different than a multicam. And so it's definitely something we were thinking about, but CBS was fantastic and incredibly supportive from the moment the pilot was picked up. They had no notes on our pilot shoot at all, which was amazing. For those of you who don't know, sometimes notes get very extensive in a pilot process, and it can be a real challenge to keep sight of what your original vision is, trying to incorporate all these thoughts from all the different sort of outside sources. And part of what let our pilot work, I think, was the fact that they gave us 0 notes, so it was great.
I know, I didn't know that. We didn't know that. We're like, wow. Impressive.
Now
Good
you
job,
guys-
us.
Now you guys know that you were perfect, which you should mention next time salary negotiations come up. Well,
Remember on our pilot, we had no notes?
well, Thomas and Angelique, Thomas, you came up through theater. Angelique, you've done a fair amount of multicam comedy over the years. How do you guys feel about sort of the single cam format these days?
well,
Pretty good.
we feel great about
That's
it.
great. Go ahead. How do you feel?
How do I feel about the single cam?
Yeah, because I know some people really love it. Other people are like, I miss the audience. I miss the energy from that. How do you feel?
I feel like it's I don't know. I prefer it in a way. I do love multicam, and I think it's one way of. I mean, I think it's harder sometimes multicam because you're doing the whole show every day and rehearsing, and it's just a different vibe. I think on a single cam like this, it gives us a lot of time to play, and we get to really explore these characters, and we get to have, like with alts and stuff, you do that a little bit in multicam, but not as much, and I feel like we really get a chance to like play off of each other more than on a multicam. I've done both. Oh, so an alt, right. So an alt is like when we're shooting, the writers, Justin and whoever else is there that day, they have a bunch of alternative endings for either scenes or lines, and then after we shoot it as written, they'll come and like pitch you a couple of endings and a couple of different alts, like a couple of different ways of ending the scene, or different line endings, basically, and different jokes. They're basically different jokes, like different ways of telling the same joke. And you do that a little bit in multicam, but I feel like we do it way more in a single cam, and it's really fun and hard, and it keeps you on your toes. I don't know. I like both. I've done a lot of both, but I prefer, this job is great, so I'm loving this job. Tommy?
Yeah.
And there it is.
There it is. No, I've never done a multicam. I've never done a multicam, but I mean, I will say that I've spent like 15 years in theater before moving to LA, so I'm used to having that feedback, that immediate feedback from an audience. And there's something really exciting about that. You know, there's something really thrilling about that. Although I don't know, like in multicam, I mean, I'm used to doing, you know, theater like anywhere between 90 minutes and 2 hours. Not like an 8-hour shooting day where your audience is taking breaks for dinner and shit like that, which seems to me just crazy. But I love having the feedback from an audience. It's exciting, it's thrilling when you're doing the same show 8 times a week. Sometimes you need that. you know, in order to just sort of keep your head above water and to keep things fresh, to keep things new, to pick you up when you may not be necessarily feeling 100% on any given day. But in terms of this job, I don't know that it would actually serve us. We're such an insulated group, and it's so, particularly in the first season, it was so important for us to be able to like keep that find and keep the family dynamic. That I frankly, I think like having other people's outside input immediately, you know, as we were playing out the scenes, may have actually led us away from where we needed to go and what we needed to do.
Well, how did the two of you find the couple dynamic? You could perhaps mention your first meeting on set if you wanted to.
Oh yeah, we shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. Tommy and I met, we'd known each other before previously, but our first day on set was, if any of you have seen the pilot, there's a scene at the end of the pilot where we make out in the car in our underwear, and we are like getting ready to bone, if you will. And that, you know, and
But wait, hold on. You laid like this gentle
I know.
framework
I know. And
for
then
like
I'm
90% of it, and then you just like bone. Like you went for bone.
I'm like a dude a little bit, like that. So,
Like you went for bone.
do you not like that phrase?
No, it's
Okay.
great. I love it. But like that's
So
amazing.
we're basically like thrown into the car in our underwear for like that's the beginning of the pilot. So you kind of get that out of the way, and that's the way we like started working on this project, was like in our underwear up on top of each other, and my legs were like, you know. So we got real comfy real quick, and I think that broke the ice. And then I think that we just
As it
fell
tends
right
to
into
do.
it. Fell right into
As
it.
it tends to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
you know, it's a really good way to meet somebody, is to have, you know, their legs wrapped around your shoulders.
It was real
and to-
tight.
and
It
to be
was real
we were
cozy.
crammed in the back of this BMW, like this old BMW shitbox, and we were pretty gamey. After
It got
pretty
ripe, I'll say
pretty
that.
ripe
It was
because it
ripe.
was just us and lights
Yeah.
and some microphones.
And it
in
got
there.
like, we were real sweaty, and it
Yeah,
was,
there was actual like steam on the
condensation in
windows
the-
and stuff. And
I know. But I will say, I mean, I think about this all the time. Like,
she does. She thinks about it all the time.
no. I
As
think back
does
to that
everybody
magic day.
who has ever spent time in the backseat of a car with me.
Tommy. But
Hey.
but seriously, I do think about how lucky we are to work
Very
together.
lucky to have spent time
We're
in the backseat of a car.
Yeah, we're a bunch of chuckles up here. We're here all day. But when you talk about like the dynamic and the couple relationship, like it would suck to go to work every day with someone that you didn't like, or that you couldn't stand, or like that you didn't want to act against, and you're supposed to like have all this chemistry. And it's easy. It's easy with you, Tommy. It's easy with you.
It is easy with me.
Okay, next question.
Well, now, in the pilot, Colleen and Matt, they're the new couple, and so they're the only pair who aren't joined together by basically blood or marriage. Did you guys have any concerns that made your coupling sort of the only potential disposable coupling on the show?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
course.
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there wasn't a day that went by that I wasn't worried that Anj was going to get fired.
We were keeping our fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, you're not married in here. I mean, you're totally disposable. I really hope you bring your A game today. Because I at least can fall back on being the middle brother, but you're just fucked. Yeah.
Out of here. I'm straight fucked.
No, it was actually really exciting.
Yeah,
it was
I mean-
actually really fun.
I felt like we had that, like we were the drama kind of in the first season a little bit, because like you didn't know what was going to happen, and that's
Yep.
always fun. And there's the ups and the downs, and I hope there's more of that in the second season.
Yeah,
Justin.
really,
Like, you know, the what's going to happen element is always really fun.
totally.
And we literally didn't know what was going to happen. So we're like, oh, we broke up. Bye. Like, see you later.
Yeah, that was
Like,
actually one of those days. Like the table read, it was like we got the script sent to us. What was like the night
The night
before
before.
we did the table read, and I get this text from Anj that's like, "Have you fucking read this?" And
I was
I was
literally-
like, "What? No, I haven't yet." I'm like watching.
And
you know.
I'm super emotional, so I was like crying, like as reading it. I was
Yes,
reading
and
script,
as
but,
the
like,
way that
too
Anj
soon.
describes crying to me, the way I know that Anj is crying is because there's 45 crying emojis
Bawling,
after
bawling.
have you fucking read this? Crying, 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 crying,
one
crying.
with,
And so
like,
like
the-
I know, oh, it's an emergency. So
If
like I
there's no
turn off
emojis,
like
it's
man
not
versus
emergency.
food and like decide to pick up my job and read it. And then, no, it was scary. It was like, oh, shit, we broke up. What are we going to do?
And there was a time for like 3 or 4 weeks on set that we were like I was like lonely a little bit because I didn't have Tommy to like hang out with all day and like
It was great.
torture. And it was just weird. Like all of a sudden we're doing our own thing on the show. And it was great because we had to like explore these other relationships and I got time with the girls and it was super fun. But at the same time I was like, oh, I miss my person. Like you end up missing your person.
Is that when we started pranking each other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by pranking each other, you mean you pranked me and a lot.
Yeah, I did. But no, but you tried.
I
It was
I
so
tried.
good.
I
You
tried,
did.
and then I
it
left.
was really good.
I left some clues behind. I'd been in his trailer. He was like, "Were you in my trailer?" And
Yeah,
it didn't work.
She tried to saran wrap my toilet seat.
You know, it's a good
but
one,
basically,
right?
she left the box of saran wrap on the counter. So like when I walked in, I was like, "Gee, I wonder what happened in here."
He's like, "You're not good at this."
You're
at
really
this."
not good at this.
And I was on this other show before called Enlisted, and Parker. Oh, thank you guys. And Parker Young and I would like prank each other like so much, like the entire season. And I never got him until this one time I did get him, and then I thought I killed him because I put baby powder in his the vents in his car. And like so when he turned on the car, it would go off in his face, and it was really good. So I was like, oh my God, I won this. I was like so proud. And then I come to set, and Jeff's like, Parker's been in an accident. He's in the hospital. And his mom emailed the whole cast, like, Parker's really in bad shape. And I bawled.
Sure.
Bawling, thought I was like, oh my God, you guys, I have to tell you something. I think I killed Parker. And so he ultimately got me back because he was fine and he was in the parking lot. So, but that was a good one. Like his mom even got involved. That's dark, man. Right? It's dark.
Well, now, Justin, when you cast a pilot, you're obviously casting actors towards the script of the pilot, but then subsequently with the comedy, you're adjusting the characters and their sense of humor to fit the actors who you cast. Talk about sort of how these two characters evolved based upon the obvious sort of humor and chemistry that they have.
Well, originally the pilot was written under sort of trying circumstances where I had another pilot. It was sold. It kind of all fell apart very quickly for various reasons that I could go into in another story. So I had to write this pilot in a week, and I didn't have time or was too lazy to think of new characters. So I basically based it off my family and my family structure. So Tommy plays my older brother, the middle. And so initially, I sort of had, the challenge of the reality of who these people were in my real life, and then the fiction of who they were in the show. And it's always interesting to then see when you cast somebody how incredibly different the character becomes based on what the actor brings to that role. And so my brother really did start dating his now wife, and they have a kid. That isn't a spoiler of where this relationship is going, but while she was living with her ex, and my brother really was back home with my parents after one career, starting another, and so when they came in, they took on an entirely different life than who my family is. And then once you start seeing the chemistry between the characters, how they interact, what sort of makes Tommy tick, and what makes Angelique tick, and they really complement each other well in this sort of yin and yang, sort of like sunshine, sometimes darkness, and it works great because then you feel like they're a real couple where he's bringing something in terms of one side of the relationship, and she's bringing something, and it's consistent. It's not only consistent in the show now, but on set when they're working, and you really see it. And what's really fun for all of us writers is to get to know and to watch the actors on set hanging out, and then drawing from who they really are, because that's going to give us the best, richest, deepest characters that we can write.
Thank you for being so diplomatic. She's sunshine, he's a dick.
Well, Angelique, you mentioned that the weeks that your characters were split up allowed you guys to get to act with different people. Talk a bit about sort of the dynamic on a show where you guys act primarily mostly together, and there are probably a number of cast members who you've worked with once or twice maximum. I mean, how does that change the situation?
I mean, I think that's what's so awesome about our show is that there's such an amazing cast. Everyone is incredible, and we get to work. It's always like exciting and surprising when you get to work with the new people that you don't get to work with. Like whenever I get to work with Betsy, I get so excited because I don't get to work with her very much. But I also feel like that's why the show ticks and is so good, because everyone is so phenomenal. Like this is a very talented group of people. And I love the family days because as Colleen and I'm not part of the family. So especially at the beginning of the first season, I was mostly just with Tommy, and that was it, or with Jordan Peele, who plays my ex-fiance, who hopefully comes back, we hope. But then as we got into the season, we had more and more family days. I think overall, that's all of our favorite days, because we do kind of segregate in these little, couplets usually, or triplets. But when we all get together, that's the best, because we don't get to do that very often. So it's like usually every other episode, or at least one day per episode, and we just like fall in love with each other. It's like, it feels like a family reunion kind of, because we don't get to hang out that much. So it's a lot of jokes and like, riffing, and it feels like a real family. And I would say that that's like where some of the best stuff comes from, is like when they get to see us all together interacting, and we're pretty much our characters at this point. So it's very true to life, and a lot of what we do like off camera definitely makes its way into the scripts.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I hope I get to work more with the kids. I love working with the kids, and I don't get to do that often, and I feel like there's a part of Colleen that like wants kids but is scared or something, and like ends up like babysitting. Like I think that's a fun idea.
Great.
And then I'm like really bad at it or
Totally.
something. But I like spin it that it's great, And then I love working with Jim. Colleen and Jim have like a nice little relationship. He has a soft spot for her. And I've gotten to do a couple of really great scenes with him, and it's, I love it. I think I would love to do more of that also.
Yeah, it's a blast to work with people that are sort of, obviously. I love working with Anji, but like,
Obviously.
it's fun, and it keeps the dynamics, the dynamic of the family sort of constantly growing, evolving, and crackling. Those family days that Anj talked about, like, those are our longest days. Not only because there's, upwards of 12 actors on set, all sort of running around, but because it's just nonstop. I mean, we love working with each other, and we all make each other laugh, and so it just the scenes just stretch out and stretch out and stretch out and stretch out because the fart day.
Because we can't stop. Yeah, the fart day.
Fucking 14 hours of fart jokes. It was the best.
The cauliflower rice day, the Thanksgiving episode.
God, it was so
Oh my God,
good.
we couldn't. I mean, my stomach hurt so bad after
So
that day.
bad.
I had cramps from laughing so hard. I almost peed myself like 19 times.
And it's like, it's everybody. It's across the board. It's like the kids are
my
really
God.
good. Like, not they're
Neil's so
obviously
funny.
obviously they're good actors. I mean, you guys can see that from watching the show. They're great actors, but they're wonderful little human beings. And then off camera, they're hilarious. They're like really funny.
But it is interesting because the way the structure of the show, we each have our person. Like, so even in the big family days, you're kind of like always checking. I feel like we check in with your person because that's your counterpart. And then you're in these big family days together. It's fun. It's good to have like a partner.
Well, there's always the Hollywood sort of cautionary "don't work with children" thing.
Oh God,
because
no.
children are unpredictable.
Right.
But then again, Diane and Jim are also eccentrics.
Yeah.
Who
They're more unpredictable for sure.
So who would
Jim
you
is
say?
the most
Who would you say is
unpredictable.
more unpredictable to act opposite?
Jim. Absolutely.
100%.
Well, I mean, it's a toss-up between Jim and Giselle, our 9-year-old.
They tie.
They really do tie because you legitimately never know what
You're
Jim
like,
is going to say.
Let's see what's gonna happen.
Like, you just
Okay.
don't know. Like, Jim has taken to making up words. which is really outstanding in its own way. It was the cauliflower day was Dickerly, right?
Dickerly. We
Stop
wanna put
being
that on a shirt.
Dickerly. And we were like, what the fuck is Dickerly?
That's like not a word, Jim.
It's not. And he didn't care.
No.
It was gonna make the show.
And I love it when he like pitches you guys like ideas and like he'll come in with like an idea of the scene. And
Yeah.
Justin's like, okay. I hear that.
So Jim is always a little touch and go.
Right.
Like you don't know where. Like
Like,
he's
pretty-
brilliant. He's brilliant, and it comes from like the best place. But it's you sort of never know. Like when you're acting with him, you're looking into those eyes, and you're like, oh, you don't even know which way you're going to go. And then Giselle is amazing because Giselle will just like leave.
That's her move. She just leaves.
Giselle will just
physically
be
walks
like,
out.
I'm done
Like
with
at
this
the end,
scene.
like that's her button. Like in acting, like especially we have like buttons, which is like the end of like you'll add a little extra joke, right? Her button is to just walk out.
Walk out.
So we're always like, oh, okay, bye, Giselle.
And she like usually like tosses a line back over her shoulder on her way out the door.
Like she'll be like,
It's amazing, and she's like
Leave it,
9.
and then
It's
walk out.
yeah, she's like, I'm gonna go brush my teeth.
I'm hungry. She like walks out. It's amazing.
Best.
Justin, what have you learned about writing for both the kids and writing for Jim?
The kids are amazing. They really are. And everything that these guys are saying is true. What's amazing about Giselle is that she was 8 this year, and she was so connected to the material and the character. She would improvise. She would add. She was like, I don't know if you guys remember from the pilot of like her falling down on the bed in the hotel room. That was her idea. She was like, she's throwing out ideas, saying, "What if I try this? What if I do that?" She also will, in the middle of a scene, just walk off the set. And you're like, where are you going? She decided that was her action for that. That was her improv. And for Jim, I think his instinct is I think he loves to forge his own trail. So I think if there's the obvious choice, he's going to want to go the other way. And that's exciting for us and a challenge, and it's exciting for the actors working opposite him. And but he really is amazing. Yeah.
It's like it's never like he's coming from a good place.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Holly, our amazing 13-year-old, is Australian. Yeah.
You know that, right?
You would never
Like,
know that, right?
Thickest Crocodile Dundee accent you've ever heard.
It's crazy. So it'll be like, cut, and she'd be like, oh, anyway, like I was saying. And you're like, what the fuck?
Like with the koala.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. And she's the best. She's like the sweetest kid in the world. But
She taught me about Snapchat. Holly keeps me up to date on like the apps I need to get.
yeah, I'm going to have to have a talk with her about
I
that.
know, sorry. It's torturing your life. I know.
It makes my life slightly more difficult.
I'm like, Holly, what's cool? Make me cool, Holly. That's what I think calling me might be like.
Thank you. Thank you. You're cool enough without Snapchat. Jesus.
Okay, let's see if there are any questions from out in the house. Does anyone have a microphone over there? Then I'll just point. Let's start there, gentlemen.
Jordan read the pilot script and just he loved it and was excited to be a part of it. We were super excited to get him, and then after he did the pilot, he had so much fun with these guys and with us on set that he wanted to come back. So he was like, "Let me know if I can ever come back," and we just had to sort of make it work with his incredibly busy schedule. But that was really all him, and we were really lucky to have him.
And he loves the show. He's like a big fan of the show. He watches it and thinks it's really funny. So that I'm always like, really? That's so nice because he's so amazing. Anything else?
The one-liners are a result of our amazing writing staff. They're generating those jokes, and then there are a significant number of those one-liners are improvised by these guys. So we'll like we were saying, we'll shoot what's written, and then we'll either feed additional jokes that were sort of pre-written for the set, but not in the script, or all the actors will come up with their own jokes. And it's just, we have incredibly talented actors in terms of generating material. They're all such funny people naturally, so it's amazing that they can be so good as dramatic actors, but also so funny and contribute in a big way.
You guys seriously should see Back It All go.
Oh my God.
Dan Back It All will go for days, and it's all brilliant.
It's amazing.
It's
And
legitimately amazing. Like,
He's who like makes us crack the most. Like as far as like I break with Dan.
oh yeah, if you guys have seen any of the gag reel stuff that CBS posted this year, it's about 90% of it is me laughing like a child at anything that Dan says. Like I think the one that got me the most, that took me out the longest, like to the point where like Colin and I actually had to sit down and like talk each other through it. Like we had to like talk each other like, all right, calm down. All right, no, we're gonna get through this. Okay, he's gonna say this, and it's gonna be really funny, and you and I are gonna really want to laugh, but we can't because we have to get this shot. Like we literally had to psych each other up. It was like we're sitting in the tent, and yeah, and like Dan was like, Dan had this line about it was hard being a bald kid in junior high. And he said it so sincerely and with so much pathos and pain and history behind it that it was the funniest fucking thing that I had ever seen in my life. And like Colin and I legitimately could not stop laughing. He would start the first syllable of the sentence and we'd go. Because we knew it was coming, and he'd be like, yeah, it's really
that happened a lot throughout the year, by the way.
Yeah, that's true.
Where we had to get Tommy and Colin to separate so that we could get through the scene without them making each other laugh at what someone else in the scene was saying.
Well, the Dan and Betsy, those scenes tend to be a little bit on the raunchier side than the rest of the show. Is that because of the direction that Dan sort of pushes things when you give him free rein?
That's a really good question.
Yeah,
no,
that's all Betsy. Betsy is filthy.
Betsy is very dirty, yeah. That might just be how we're writing. That's coming from the room, and then maybe they're feeding off of that.
All the episodes.
My favorite personal improv of the year was actually not from our core cast. It was from Rhys Darby, who he came on and played a character with Stephanie Weir, a very eccentric couple, and he improvised the line, "We are but tools," and it was so brilliant in the moment, and it had a huge portion of the crew in tears, crying, like to where like people weren't able to do their jobs. But there were so many. I mean, consistently throughout every day we have those moments, and yeah. Did you guys have any?
I'm literally trying to think. I feel like there was something with Cheeto that happened with Cheeto, but I can't. Didn't Jim do something with Cheeto that kept? Yeah, he had a lot of fun with Cheeto. I mean, the whole Cheeto day, I feel like was always like there's a lot of jokes around the Cheeto.
Cheeto's
There's
scenes
a lot of
get pretty crazy.
Yeah. I can't think of anything offhand, but except for like everything.
That's the thing, is that there's so much of it, like you watch it and you go, oh yeah.
Like at this point, I'm like, I can't remember what was improv and what was like written. Like when I'm thinking back, I can't remember. So a lot, everything, and that's it. Bye.
Now,
Any other questions?
Now, Justin, so much of the hook of the show initially was the 4 separate stories, and I'm curious what you learned about the format over the course of a first season. Which kind of stories work in this format, which maybe don't, and you need to steer away from in season 2?
It was a definite learning curve, and still it continues to be, but I feel like we have a much better handle on what works and what doesn't work right now. I think initially, almost the entire writing staff had come from traditional sitcom writing backgrounds. And so we're used to telling stories in a certain way with a sort of a big setup, and then the story builds, and then this sort of wrap-up conclusion. And with our format, we don't have time for that. You have to get into the story really late. Like the story is going from the first scene. And we wound up finding that we were always cutting our first scenes. Either the first scene's written in the script or in post. We would shoot it and then cut it because we didn't need it. The audience could get up to speed quickly knowing here's where we're going with this story. You get to the funny meat of it, and then you don't have time for sort of the hugs and the wrap-up and all the sort of, oftentimes I've been on shows where we would, you basically write what the audience has already seen. in these apology scenes or those sorts of things. We don't have time for that. So that was part of the learning curve for sure. And the other challenge really was making sure that every cast member was represented in one of the 4 stories. And that was a challenge that I didn't anticipate. We would feel like we would have 4 stories, and I would clap my hands and be like, this is a great episode, guys. And someone would point out, Diane Wiest is not in this episode. And we would have to scramble and like, okay, we got to break a Diane story. We got to get, that character involved. So that was a real challenge. And then also, for a season of 22 episodes, I forgot doing the math that's 88 stories. So there was a tremendous amount of material to generate that we hadn't anticipated. But
Okay. Did you have a question?
Yes. Right. I mean, I feel like every single one of my relationships kind of started. I always have like a rocky start. But
Go on.
Actually, I would say that I'm married now. I've been married almost 3 years, and the way I met my husband and the whole way that went down was pretty weird. So that's what
Like furry weird.
No, like we were set up, and then I basically was like, I'm gonna go home with you, and then I did, and then he didn't ask for my number, and I was like, fuck that, and then I like stalked him, and then he got my number because I basically made him.
Because you wrote it in shoe polish on his
Yes,
car.
Yes. So that's what comes to mind. I mean, that's pretty much.
You carved your phone number
I was like,
into
"Call
his
me."
new paint job.
I was a little, come on, I was like in my
Like some
20s.
Carrie Underwood shit
Yeah,
right
it's
there,
crazy.
man.
I was a little crazy.
I carved my phone number into his brand new leather bucket seats. That's dark. Poor Jason.
I know. And Tommy and Jason are good friends, and now
We're
you,
really
you
good
know
friends.
so much about our early relationship now.
Yeah, and I it's on a pretty much a daily basis that I find myself saying, poor Jason. Do I have any weird beginnings to any relationships that I've been in? No, man. I'm super vanilla.
Yeah.
I'm being the resident little rain cloud. No, I mean, I think that all relationships, by very definition of being, anywhere between 2+ human beings that are getting together, are by their very definition weird. Because people are fucking crazy. Yeah. Everybody is. It's just a matter of whether or not your crazy lines up with your partner's crazy. And sometimes it doesn't, and that leads to some fun adventures. And sometimes it doesn't, and that leads to some unfun adventures. And then sometimes, every once in a while, it just does. And man, that's great.
And that's us.
That is all. And that's a good way to end this panel. Thanks to Justin, Angelique, and to Thomas.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dan.